Now I'm
Okay.
recording. Hey, Pat.
Well, welcome. Hello and welcome to the What Do the Gays Think podcast.
Hi.
This is an opinion podcast. This is a disclaimer. This is an opinion podcast where two members of the LGBTQ
LGBT
plus
what?
two members of the queer community, who happen to be gay, will give you their opinions of things that sometimes have facts or sometimes are just opinions, but are not to be taken as gospel.
Oh, yeah. Never, obviously, because the gospel is not the word of the Lord.
It's a fiction.
Yeah. I mean, the whole Bible is a book of
Yeah,
fiction.
and I'm joined by my part-time nudist and full-time homosexual, Matthew.
I called you my dentist in the last episode, and
How
you
are
went you
you?
went for nudist?
Well, we are all part-time nudists.
Okay.
I often find myself naked.
I usually find myself naked in a couple of scenarios, but not like often.
I often find myself naked with no recollection of how I got there.
Okay. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
How are you?
With this new lighting, I feel very good. I feel very
Oh,
fresh. I'm
like I said,
recording.
it pops out your eyes.
Oh, hold on. Oh, I'm recording in the same spot I was in before.
Ah, in your lab.
Yes, we're still here. Hopefully, once we finish recording this, I can finish up like one thing and then I can go home. And I'll get home probably around midnight.
Oh, well, it be that way sometimes. You are such a busybody, but you're a hard worker, and I appreciate that about you.
Working hard and hard at work.
Work hard, play. You're an icon. You're a legend,
Like,
and you are the moment. I mean, come on now.
come on now.
Anyway, what are we talking about?
Anyway, well, oh, I thought about going into this as a sandwich. So
Okay.
I'd like to start off with something nice. We can get into the meat of it, which will not be nice, and then we can finish off with something nice.
Okay, I like that. Maybe.
Did we ever talk about Billie Eilish's new album?
I it may have been mentioned, but I don't think we
Right.
went into it, you know?
Yes. Miss Eilish has a new album out,
Miss
and
Eilish.
she Miss Eilish has a new album out, and it's her second studio album that she's released. It's called Happier Than Ever, and I will admit, on first listen through, I wasn't thrilled.
Oh,
But then after my second and third listen through, I was thrilled.
okay. I appreciate
Um,
that.
I like that it does sound different in terms of tone and texture from her first album. I found her first album to be very good. And this album, maybe not as good, but it has on it. Oh, there are several songs I like on it. But one of the songs, the titular song, "Happier Than Ever," is probably one of my favorite songs ever.
Of all time.
Yes,
Wow.
I listened to it and it's just so the song itself has like two main parts to it. And the first part, she very much sounds like her last album, and her second part, she sounds like something else. And I want her to do more of that. And if that's sort of like where she might go, and it's written well, there's like a story, there's plot, it's beautiful. I
Wow.
don't know why. I live for that song. And there are several other songs, Oxytocin, Haley's Comet, Getting Older, all good
Well,
songs.
send me the Spotify link so I can listen to it.
Yes, her music, like her last album, they're not really for dancing. They're not for
Okay.
popping pussies or bussies or whatever you got between your legs.
Mm.
They're really like, especially Happier Than Ever and Haley's Comet. They're very like vibing in your feels, very nice, or very like emotional songs. I love.
I lived.
I lived too, and that was the first part of the sandwich. I wanted to keep it nice and short, just in case I did accidentally speak on it in an earlier episode.
Right. So the top of the sandwich, I guess you could say, is like a flatbread.
Yes. Miss Eilish was our first piece of the bread.
Wow. Thank you, Miss Eyelash. I hope you didn't
Thank
get any eyelashes in my bread, because that would not be
Nah,
good.
I mean, listen, you had COVID. What's worse you can get?
Just because I had COVID doesn't mean I want eyelashes in my bread. I'm sorry.
Those two aren't the same? Oh, okay. I'm
What?
sorry. I'm sorry. So let's get on to the
The meat?
the meat. What do you prefer in a sandwich? What's your favorite innard of a sandwich? You a meat kind of gal, or do you like a spread of some sort?
Oh, let's talk about spread. No.
Yes,
um,
spread legs, spread the lies, and spread the COVID.
the lies, the slander of vandewater, Jackie.
Called out again on the podcast. Found dead.
Second
Found
time. Listen, Jackie's a star in my mind. Of course, we're gonna call them out on the podcast.
Oh, a star, a legend, an icon, the moment, the whole kit and caboodle.
What were we talking about? Oh, what meat? I like
And not even just
turkey.
meat. What's your like favorite innards for a sandwich? Not just meat, obviously, but like if it is meat, sure. But what's your preferred interior of a sandwich? What is you spread open those buns, you pull open the legs of your sandwich. What's on the inside?
Ass. No. Um, what are we talking about?
Yeah,
Am I eating lunch or am I eating dinner?
just if you had to, it's your last meal on Earth.
My
It has
la-
to be a sandwich, though. What's on the sandwich?
Oh, if it's my last meal on Earth and I don't care about being healthy, then it's gonna be like a cheesesteak probably.
Okay, okay. So you like that beef?
It could be a chicken cheesesteak. They're both pretty good.
Okay, okay.
Um, but yeah, if I'm leaning on the healthier side though, I would go for a turkey sandwich.
Right. Yeah, you wanna reduce that fat.
Yeah, yeah. How about you? This is riveting content, by
Well,
the way. I love this.
today's sandwich, when we spread open the buns and the bread, it's Dave Chappelle.
Oh, is this why you sound so depressed?
I, that's why I needed the to start on a good place and end at a good place because I don't like talking about what we're about to talk about.
Okay, Dave Chappelle, let's hear
Um,
it. I've heard some things, but tell me.
so for all you who don't know, Dave Chappelle is a stand-up comic. He's also written and he's acted. He produces a bunch of stuff, and he's received Emmy Awards, Grammy Awards, the Mark Twain Prize. Best known for his show, The Chappelle Show, and a ton of his stand-ups that he does. He's been on SNL. He's done a whole bunch. He was in Star is Born for a little bit. Whatever
Okay.
that was, that little cameo basically
Whatever
he
that
had.
was.
And basically, for the past maybe three or four comedy stand-up specials he's done, it's been through Netflix. He had a big deal with them. Basically, they were like, "You're doing all your specials here." So I
Okay.
think he did his last three or four at Netflix, and not just recently, but for several years now, he has been called out on controversial statements, just like a lot of comedians have been.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, it's based around the LGBTQ plus community, in particular the trans community.
Right. Mm.
And his most recent release, which was I think just last week or 2 weeks ago on Netflix, his last one he's doing for Netflix for a while. He's like run out under a deal. He'll do stand up, who knows when. It's called the Closer, and he said some stuff, and people got up in arms about it again.
How do you
Now,
how
to
do you
preface,
feel? Oh, okay.
no,
Go
go
ahead.
go on. No, tell me.
Okay, I was gonna ask, like, how do you feel about the general state of comedy right now?
Oh, yeah, let's get into it.
Because from my perspective, comedy in the past, prior to like 2018, probably honestly at this point, um, comedy in the past has been a lot of like making fun of other people. Uh,
Yes.
so a lot of other people would take the brunt of comedians' jokes. And
Yeah,
that, it's never been a cool thing to do, I would say.
right. A lot of it is, there's always a a topic of a joke or a punchline or a group or a person or a there's always something which is being made fun of, clearly,
Yeah.
as most jokes are structured. So for me, and the question recently has become like, what does comedy look like now, or how does comedy change moving forward because of things like PC culture, cancel culture, people being more sort of socially aware of certain things and being more quote unquote sensitive to certain things. So I feel, as someone who likes stand up, to preface, I do like stand up comedy. I do see comedians, I not as much as I'd like to. I've seen a few comedy shows in person. I've seen a ton of comedy shows, obviously specials on Netflix or TV. But to preface, I am not a fan of Dave Chappelle.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not because I don't like him. It's because I don't consume enough of his content to even know whether or not I like him.
Okay.
So I have seen maybe clips of the Chappelle show, and I have seen, before this most recent stand-up, which I watched today, I've seen maybe two of his other stand-ups
Okay,
in
so you
whole.
you watched the show that most recently came out.
Yes, I wanted to be educated at least that far to get an idea of what the context was for what he said, because clearly people will often, especially online, take things out of context. So I wanted the context. So I'm not a fan of him, not because I don't like him. He's probably a fine person, just because I don't have enough of his repertoire in my system to make a real assessment of whether or not I like him as a comedian or not.
Whether or not we think is a good person is up for debate as well, I'd say.
Also true. I'm not always the best judge of character. Just look at the men I've dated in my past.
Just look at the people you make friends with. Me.
I know. Misogynistic, racist you.
What? Misogynistic? Racist?
Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna stop before racist and be like, I'm not misogynistic, and then wait, clearly I'm
No.
racist.
No.
Okay. So do you know anything about this?
Okay, so I will admit I've only seen the one clip of him saying that he's a turf. Like that's the
Yes.
only clip that I've seen of that show.
Yes.
So I will need
Yeah.
to you have more context than me, so you have to tell
Hmm.
me what happened.
All right. Well, this is the brief timeline of events, and it's funny how it all intermingles. So Dave Chappelle releases his thing on Netflix, right? He gets
Right.
some backlash. There's another show on Netflix called Dear White People. Do you know about it?
Yes, I have heard of it. Yes. I have not
All
watched
right.
it, but I've heard of
Dear
it.
White People is a show on Netflix that centers around a black cast at a traditionally white, affluent college. The writer slash producer slash showrunner, they have a bunch of titles, works at Netflix, obviously, because it's a Netflix show, said that after Dave Chappelle's show, she will, I believe they identify as a she, if not they, she will not be working with Netflix anymore because of what
Mm,
they did by allowing Dave Chappelle to publish what he did, say what he said. If turns out this person is a white trans woman who writes for Dear White People, which is a black centric show.
right.
So people saw that and were like, wait, why is a white person writing for a black show? And then that became the topic of conversation and not the Dave Chappelle comment,
Oh God,
which
here we
was
go.
weird for me because I was like, the writer's room for that show is obviously, or maybe it's not obvious. I didn't assume it was an all white or all black writers' room or
Hmm.
all producers, but maybe that was my ignorance. So I didn't see why that was the topic of discussion. I thought the real topic was what Dave Chappelle said, but people started to get on this trans woman for speaking out, and more importantly, why she was working on a show about black people as a white person. Yet Dear White People does have a trans character, which apparently the showrunner writer wrote for as a trans woman who could impart their experience on that character.
Got
Because
it.
besides the different races, there are universal experiences as trans people, I'm sure, just as there are universal experiences as gay people that transcend things like race and gender.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to have it a trans person on the team to write for a trans person. I think that makes sense. Yes.
Right. So that's where the topic of conversation shifted to. And then I got confused because I was like, shouldn't we be talking about what Dave Chappelle said? So then I was like, well, I might as well watch it and then see what he said.
Okay.
In general, I watched the whole thing. It's like, I don't know, like under an hour. I laughed maybe twice. And
Okay.
I like comedy. I want to laugh, so I'm very open to just laughing at things. Like it doesn't take too much to make me laugh.
Right.
I'm not a stingy like sullied person that doesn't laugh at things. So I only laughed twice, and to be honest, I can't remember what those were even like what the jokes were at that point. Like I don't know because the rest of it I felt he was just talking to the audience and it wasn't really it wasn't a classic like punchline setup, but there weren't really jokes. It was him saying things and me thinking to myself, but why is he saying it? Like, what does he want? What's the point?
What does he
Where is the
want?
flavor?
Where's
Where's
the
the flavor?
flavor?
So he starts the show basically like nice and easy, and then eventually gets to a point where he's like, this is my last show for Netflix for a while. I'm taking a break. We'll get back to it at some point. But he really wanted to address the LGBTQ plus community because of his previous work has made him sort of this contentious figure in the community, and he wanted to address it to kind of clear the air as to why he said the things he did and how he's really not someone who's like against queer people, trans people, gay people, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And what followed was confusing because, as I said before, I don't know why he was saying the things he was saying. For example,
Here
let
we
me
go.
pull up my notes.
Get out the quotes.
At early on in the show, not even halfway through, I don't think, basically talks about a scenario in which he uh, beat up a woman who was a lesbian, presumably, or perhaps or a trans woman. He might have mistaken her for trans, and she was actually a lesbian woman, but she was, I think, identifying as a woman. And he makes a joke about basically beating her up. Now, I saw that headline before I watched it, and I was like, "There's got to be more to this." So the scenario which he describes is this: he's at a club years ago. A woman comes up to him to talk, and he's just being friendly. And apparently, that woman's like girlfriend or someone came over thinking that Dave Chappelle was hitting on her, and basically got in his face about it. And
Okay.
she went to hit him. He moved and then hit her back. So, apparently this woman instigated the violence. Dave Chappelle was responding, but the story that he was giving did not give me any sense of his understanding of the situation or why he was saying it. Because he brings up these stories, as he prefaces before, with, I want to explain basically how I feel about the LGBT plus community as it pertains to me and my work and the response to it. And he brings up this story about him hitting a woman. And I'm like, I don't understand why you brought this up. And what was worse is like the laughter it generates from the audience,
Mm.
laughing at the fact that he's admitting to hitting a woman. Now, granted, the woman in his story allegedly went to hit him first, but I don't think to support your point of view that you are like pro LGBTQ plus to then your evidence is I'm an equal opportunist abuser and just hit a
Yeah,
woman.
I hit a
Like
queer person. Hello.
that's like I will watch this again because as I said, this did confuse me because I was getting lost in what he was trying to get across as his point. So that was just the first incidence of confusion.
I mean, if he's trying to say, like, here's my point of view of the LGBT community and then brings up that as his first point, I think that goes to show how he views the LGBT community in theory.
Yeah, and it just gets worse. So then he brings up DaBaby, which we've spoken about.
Oh, yeah, we did speak
Um,
about that.
DaBaby, the rapper, said some like homophobic shit about, especially about AIDS.
Yeah.
at one of his concerts. Someone clipped it, put it online, and he got quote unquote canceled.
Yeah.
Um, Dave Chappelle cops to it and says that was too far. He shouldn't have said those things. Then this is another scenario where I don't know where he's going. He says, DaBaby, apparently this is true, he says, DaBaby shot and killed someone in a Walmart years ago, and nothing happened to him.
What?
Yeah, yes, so stay with me.
Okay, I'm with
Apparently,
you.
DaBaby shot and killed someone at Walmart years ago in the South, like North Carolina or South Carolina. And he's like, you know, he says the N word, but I'm not gonna say that. A person could straight up shoot a man in Walmart, but if he angered the LGBTQ plus the gay community, then he gets his life ruined. I think what he was trying to show was that the queer community has a lot of like influence and power over people's lives that they could get him canceled over saying such a small thing, whereas he could straight up kill a person and have no repercussions. And I was like, that's not the right conclusion to draw. The right conclusion is this man killed someone and didn't get any repercussions, probably because he was famous.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing about, class society.
Yeah, and I will when I wrap this up, I'm gonna get into basically ideas that I think were conflated, which I might be misconstruing it, but for what I thought, or misconstruing it, is it construing or construing?
Construing.
Misconstruing it, but that could be for the end of the topic. So, DaBaby kills someone, nothing happens. He says something about AIDS, he gets canceled. Clearly, the conclusion is the gay community is too powerful.
Well, I'm not saying that the gay community is not powerful, because hell yeah,
Right.
we are. Nowadays,
But
we are.
was that the right comparison story example to give to make that point?
Um, no, but I also want to ask, like, when DaBaby shot and killed someone, like, I'm assuming it was maybe self-defense. Like, how was there no? Can I have the context behind this killing?
I didn't look into it because I wanted to be as sort of like impartial to Dave Chappelle as possible. So I just watched the stand up as like a normal person would, like prior to tweeting about it. And I can see you already Googling it.
I'm
DaBaby
going in.
killed man in Walmart.
DaBaby
So
kills.
so while you're Googling it, um,
I need to know. I need to know more.
it was it was just another instance of like a strange sort of uh, story that I didn't realize. I didn't get the merit of it. I didn't get how it supported what he thought.
Okay. Apparently, the man was trying to rob him, so he probably
Okay,
came out as self-defense, and that's probably what happened. Okay, I'm good now.
then that's still a strange story because it's not as if he killed someone and there were no repercussions whatsoever. It was more like, there were circumstances which it was not fine, but it was circumstances which it was understood why it happened.
Yeah, yeah.
It's still not it's
It's
still not great.
it's not like DaBaby took a gun, went into Walmart, and just shot someone randomly, like legit
Right.
murder.
But he's positing it as this sort of like crazy event, yet DaBaby had no repercussions, yet he does one slight against the gay community and like it's curtains for his career.
You know what I love? I'm pretty sure I saw a lot of Dave Chappelle comments that were like, people are taking all of his stuff out of context, and trying to paint him as a terrible person when he's taking shit out of context in his show to make jokes about it.
Right. Right.
Hello?
So I was confused. And then the other thing was he I think this was him kind of kidding or being a little hyperbolic. He was like, I looked up the definition of feminism.
This is the clip that I saw. Yeah.
And he says, when I looked at the definition, it said, a person who, supports the equal rights for females. And he's like, I was so shocked. I didn't realize it was any gender. I thought it was only like for women.
Yeah.
And people start clapping. And I'm like, you're telling me a Mark Twain Prize, which is for writing, if I'm or like sort of like writing and critiquing of society or whatever, a Emmy award winning, Grammy award winning, whatever stand-up comedian didn't know the definition of feminism included any gender.
Apparently not. Or
Like, and
maybe
then
it was
people
part
clap
of the
for
bit, but
him.
I don't know.
Right. And people clap for him. Like, you're clapping a man for figuring out a word. Like, it's that's first grade SpongeBob. Like, it's a
That's first
definition.
grade.
So, okay, fine. He talks about the definition of feminism and how it could mean anyone. And he basically goes, and I quote this is not me saying it. He's like, I just thought it was frumpy dykes.
Yeah, I remember
Frumpy
that.
dykes. And then goes on to say, I just thought it was, quote, frumpy dykes who, and this is a paraphrasing, who would say things like, oh, don't rape me. And then
Mm.
he responded with, don't worry, you're not the ones that people want to rape. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay,
This is
cool.
the clip
Now,
that I saw.
for anyone who doesn't know, I don't like jokes about sexual violence, which include obviously rape and
Yeah.
molestation. Um, I don't, I don't like it, for personal reasons that of my own, but also because I don't think it's a good thing to joke about. Um,
No, can cause trauma response in a lot of people who have experienced those things in the past, so it's probably not a good thing to joke
yeah,
about.
like if it's your own trauma and you want to work through it in humor, that's you. You can own your trauma whenever you want.
Yeah.
Dave Chappelle's not owning any trauma here. He's talking about some quote, frumpy dyke, who, you know, is the stereotypical feminist that he thought existed prior to his knowledge of figuring out feminism is for everyone instead of just for, females.
Yeah, I will always say this. You can make fun of yourself. You can't make fun of
Yeah.
other people unless you're making fun of yourself as in like your community too. Like we can make fun of the gay community because we're queer and we're in the community.
Right, because we can see the nuances within it and have and have a social understanding of what kind of quote unquote really happens in the community.
Yeah. So like we can
Um,
make jokes about gays, but people that don't understand our community making jokes about our community, then you might accidentally hurt somebody and let's not do that.
yeah,
You might
I
perpetuate
think
stereotypes. You could do a lot of things.
I think there is a difference between making fun of a group of people, any group by any definition of a group, race, gender, whatever, sexuality, making fun of a group of people for comedic value solely based on demoralizing them, dehumanizing them, playing up stereotypes, whatever. There is another um, type of humor where you can, isolate a group and speak to like a greater truth or a greater thing that maybe we all experience that goes beyond that group, but maybe starts there, or that's a good focal point for it,
Hmm.
that you I don't think comedy is dead, for example. I don't
Right.
think we can't make fun of anything. I think you can make jokes, but there has to be, it has to be, in my opinion, deep. Like it has to have more sustenance to it. It can't be very fluffy. Like fluffy comedy should be like fart jokes. That's fluffy comedy. But if you want to talk about like, if you want to get to the real social issues, the comedy has to be funny, but it also has to be like deep. It also has to speak to something that people can really relate to, and that you can make fun of it or you can humorize it, so people can kind of enjoy the levity of it, even though it may be a serious topic.
Right. And I
Right.
think
So
I think that I forget where I heard this from, but I think I was watching a TikTok probably that it was like, when you're a comedian and you're making jokes, you can punch up and you can punch to the side, but you can't punch down.
yes, yes, he brings this up in his stand-up as well.
Oh, does he?
Yes, he said that he's been accused of punching down to the trans community. And how, and this will bring us to the trans portion of his show, which surprisingly, his show was almost exclusively queer content, which was surprising as a man who is straight. Not that a straight man can't talk about queer stuff. It's just surprising that so much of his like last show on Netflix was queer content.
Oh my god.
So let's get into it. He's a turf.
He's a turf. Here we go.
Now, he said basically he was saying that, like, from what I gleamed was that the trans community in particular, canceled J.K. Rowling for being a turf, and he was like, I had to figure out what a turf was. Turf is an acronym, and that's just another way the trans community likes to quote make up words to win arguments. And I'm like, okay, the
Bitch.
trans community, I think, is inventing language where there currently was none because they weren't given space to develop language for certain things like, trans vocabulary, things like female to male to female, or cisgendered, transgendered, words like that.
Yeah.
So he talks about the whole turf thing. And what I found interesting was people were clapping and people kept clapping at things that I was kind of uncomfortable with. And I was like, this is the real, not issue, but this is the real thing people should be looking towards. Like Dave Chappelle giving his opinion on certain things, whatever. He's just one person, he's just a comedian, he's just one guy. But having like a whole audience of people clapping for certain things, it made me realize that, you know, his thoughts and opinions go beyond his body and people also agree with it. And who knows where their thoughts and opinions end on like the trans conversation, if it's worse or better. So it was very unsettling sometimes to hear how much clapping there was.
No, this is true because like people with large platforms can be considered dangerous for having certain opinions. And
Yeah.
I'll take it the last episode. We talked about Nicki Minaj and the anti-vax tweets. Like you
Hmm.
can have your opinions, but if you have a platform with millions of people following you and you post dangerous stuff like that is dangerous. You post dangerous stuff is dangerous. Like
Yeah. So, like I said, a lot of his show was queer content. I was very surprised. Felt a little seen because I was like, wow, queer content, but not from the space that I wanted it from. Can I get Q4 season two
oh
instead?
my god, Q4 season 2.
So to sort of wrap this up, um, I was getting the sense that there were three kind of topics being interwoven. It was sort of like classism with the whole DaBaby being a celebrity thing. He also brought up Kevin Hart. So, celebrities being canceled. There was the queer community, specifically the trans community, and there was the issue of race. Because by the end of his special, he says, my problem has never been with the queer trans community, it's been with white people. And he says, I like talking about, the bad stuff that white people do, basically. So I was getting a little confused because it felt like almost he was saying, he at one point says in the show, he's like, gay people like being the minority until they have to be white again. Basically,
What?
gay white people will use their status as a minority as a gay person to basically code switch to act certain ways in certain scenarios, but when it's better for them, they will switch back to being primarily a white person and gain privilege back, which is true. That does happen.
What is the word for this? Hang on. There's a word that I learned on TikTok that I have now forgotten the word, but it's like understanding that there's different levels of privilege that exist with being
Right.
part of certain groups, and if you don't
Yeah.
understand like the different levels of privilege, uh,
Yeah. So he was talking about it, and he's right. As a gay white man, I exist as a minority in the the least sense because my whiteness and my maleness, my cisgendered white presenting gives me so much privilege, and my homosexuality really just detracts a little bit from it
yeah,
because I can operate in this world much better than most people just based on those two factors alone. And in some situations, my homosexuality is a detriment and can be, like, let's say, life threatening or not the best. But in most situations, I can sort of, turn it off and be a white cis man and get away, not get away with, but, you know, exist in most certain scenarios all right and fine.
yeah,
I was confused though because I was like, that's true, but you are now kind of robbing the experience of people of color who are also in the queer community.
yeah,
Because he says his problems with white people, and I was like, that's fine. You want to talk about how dumbass white people are? That's true.
yeah,
But when he talks about like he brings up a story about this gay white man who was kind of like causing a problem, and then he got in his face, and the gay white man went to call the police, and he was like, of course, like a gay white man would do that because as a white man, he knows that he can call the police and it won't be a problem for him. If he was
hmm.
black, obviously, that would be a problem. Even if he was or wasn't gay, it would still be a problem. And I was like, exactly. Can we talk about that more? And when it came to like the trans community thing, um, I was like, can you talk more about how people of color, specifically Black trans women, are like routinely suffering violence and death in their communities?
Yeah.
Like, how about you talk about that instead of like kind of trying to focus the trans community as this sort of entitled community that gets people canceled? What about the real kind of horrors they face and shitty lives they can lead, as opposed to you just saying like, oh, well, it's only really with white people that I have a problem with. It's not really the trans community. And I'm like, but trans people, especially white trans people, sometimes can't separate the two, obviously, because they're one
Mm,
person. And because being trans is more than just a white experience, it is a trans experience, which is spread across every freaking race. So it was just, I was flabbergasted by the end of it because I had no idea what the fuck he was trying to say. It's like that one racist relative that keeps saying they're not racist, but you're like, then why do you keep having to say it? He basically kept saying like, I don't do this, I don't do that. But I'm like, but you keep having to tell people and you keep getting in situations like what's the disconnect here that we're not seeing?
right. Yeah, I think that the queer people of color community suffers obviously a lot more than the white
Yeah.
queer community, just based on the fact that they're white versus people of color.
Just turn the news on. You'll see it.
I mean, yeah, but also like you can't also strip people of their certain identities. Like obviously, there's going to be queer people who face oppression because they're queer. It doesn't matter what race they are.
Yeah,
Um,
especially trans people. They're probably the group that faces, in my opinion, the worst amount of stigma, regardless of race.
Yeah. So when you're at the like in terms of the privilege levels, when you're at the great bottom of the barrel here, like you're a person of color, trans woman, like all the levels of privilege at the very bottom. Like, how do they feel about what Dave Chappelle is saying?
Well, perfect transition. He brings up a, I believe, Black trans woman who he met after she transitioned. So he met her as a woman. He makes that point very clear. Um, who wanted to be a comedian, and he like was friends with her, and he said, "Okay, I have a stand up. I want you to open for me." Apparently, she bombed,
Oh.
but she stayed during his set. And the set actually became him and her talking back and forth about certain things. And a lot
Hmm.
of it was trans issues or just issues in general. And at some point, she says, you don't have to understand the issues that I have as a trans woman. You just have to, like, basically see me and understand that I'm experiencing like a human experience, whether or not you're trans or not. He goes, okay, I can understand that. The special airs, Dave Chappelle gets a lot of shit for being transphobic from some of the comments he makes. This comic, whose name escapes me, tweets and basically says, "Hey, I was there. He was the one I was the one talking to him about trans issues. Like, I'm a trans woman myself. I don't see him as transphobic as I know him as a person and know, him deeply or whatever." It's very sweet.
Did he call
She
himself a
apparently
turf
got
though?
that was before the whole turf thing.
Okay, yeah.
Um, she gets dragged online by both, queer people, trans people for supporting him as a trans woman, even though he, in their eyes, is clearly transphobic.
Hmm.
She apparently kills herself.
Oh.
Now, he leaves it up to the audience to assume there's a connection between the hurtful comments, the dragging, and her killing herself, which
Hmm.
it's a logical connection. It might be there, it might be true. I didn't look into it more. As I said, I kind of just left it as just watching the special, digesting it, and bringing what I saw.
Right.
So he's presenting an example of a Black trans woman who supported him. Now, as we said in the last episode, where we brought up proof by example,
Oh yeah.
I don't think he's absolving himself of his comments by saying he knew a Black trans woman and she said it was okay. But that's kind of what it felt like.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
it's
think that's what he wanted to do. I think he really wanted the shock value of saying she killed herself, and this is what happens when a woman or when anyone gets dragged on the internet through cancel culture. It has serious side effects on the person. That's true. That's a real argument he could make. But it felt as if he was trying to just a tiny bit go, I knew a black trans woman. She said I was fine, so it must be fine.
oh yeah, it's just like the white people that are like, I'm friends with the black person, therefore I'm not racist.
That's why I can say the N word. And I'm like,
Oh,
well,
well, that's a step in the other direction, but yes, or a step further in the same direction.
so the only thing I want to end on this with is, he brought up the whole Kevin Hart thing, the whole debate thing, and cancel culture, and basically how the trans community and the queer community have this great power to get people canceled. I want to ask you, why is it when someone gets canceled? Because we even have friends who don't like cancel culture. I could think of two immediately who don't like cancel culture.
Oh, okay.
Why don't people ask the governing bodies of the comedian, of the actor or actress, why they decided to fire or remove the person? So, Kevin Hart says some bad shit. He gets kicked off of hosting the Oscar. Everyone blames the people on Twitter that dragged him. Why did no one blame the Academy of, movies or whatever it's called for firing Kevin Hart? When DaBaby got pushed off his label or whatever happened to him, everyone blamed everyone on Twitter for all the gays ruined DaBaby. Why didn't
Mm,
anyone blame his label for removing him or, canceling his tour or whatever?
okay.
You're so why don't we blame those governing bodies? Because it seems like it allows Twitter to have so much power when these governing bodies kind of succumb to the will of the people on Twitter, which, in my opinion, only represent a small fraction of the actual people in our country.
Well, also, in terms of blaming the governing bodies, why don't we also blame the person? Like,
Well, yeah, it's because, the discourse is the people who are dragging them blame him, or her for making the comment, and all of their fans have to blame someone, so they blame the people on Twitter who dragged them.
right.
Instead of also looking at, the label, looking at the academy, looking at their bosses. Like, you don't like the people who represent your comedians, your actors, you have to find something else. And I
Mm,
believe as we get more progressive, there are going to be less and less places that are going to be safe havens for people who are a little more conservative with how they speak, or I should
right.
say more liberal with how they speak negatively about things.
Right.
But I think there are going to be less and less, groups like that because more and more groups I think are becoming more open-minded. So why don't we look towards these larger powers at play here?
I don't know. I think I've given my opinion on cancel culture before. Um,
Yes, we have. We've talked about it.
like my opinion is that most of the time, at least I feel, if someone makes a dumb comment, um,
Yeah.
they should be held accountable for it. They should go off and apologize and do what they can to rectify whatever they did. Um,
Yes.
I mean, that's just my opinion. People need to be held accountable. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes it can go too far. Sometimes things are taken out of context. You don't have the full context behind what somebody says. Oh, I have this 2-second clip on YouTube. I'm going to cancel this
Yeah.
person because of that. Yes, that happens. Sometimes things are taken out of context. I believe that. Most of the time, though, I think it's justified.
Right. So I don't think to end this, I don't think Dave Chappelle is evil. I don't think he's malicious. I don't think he I don't think he wants to hurt people. This is just my opinion. I don't think he's cruel. I think he has some ideas about the trans community and the queer community, and he might be conflating them with other things such as classism, race, and privilege that maybe he should re-examine, maybe I should re-examine. But what I will say is, since I'm a white, God, I was a white
Straight.
straight man. I'm
Ew.
a white cis man. My opinion here isn't really doesn't hold weight because I don't know the trans experience. I don't know the black or any experience beyond the white cis experience and the slight gay experience that I have.
Slight.
Um, so I would like to direct everyone to someone else who
Oh.
is a Black trans woman who had actually comments on the whole Dave Chappelle thing. So, one second while I just pull up her TikTok.
Oh.
Okay. So, she is an actor, and she actually is an actor on Dear White People. She knows the writer, the trans writer who was called out for their comments against Dave Chappelle. You can find them on TikTok at, I'm just going to spell it. I don't know how to pronounce it. Queitann.
Queetan.
Quentin. I'm so sorry if
QVN.
I Queitann. Anyway, they have a few videos about how they feel about the Dave Chappelle of it all, and also the backlash in terms of everyone turning their attention to that transgendered writer instead of keeping the spotlight on Dave Chappelle and his comments. So look at them, follow them. They have, I am very much in line with their opinion. I think they spoke much more eloquently than I did, and they have the sort of experience as both a trans woman and a woman of color to inform their opinion. So I think everyone should go check them out, because my opinion might be garbage and this whole thing might be a mess, but they, I think, eloquently and very correctly state how I felt.
Wow. I'll put that link in the
Yeah.
TikTok. Not in the TikTok. I'll put that link in the description to their TikTok.
Yes. And finally, we've reached the other end of the sandwich.
Yes. Is it flatbread or is it like a good juicy piece of bread?
It's a good it's juicy. It's moist.
It's moist. All right. Give me that moist
It's got
piece of bread.
some bounce. Um,
Ew.
I start. I watched Sex Education season 3, which I loved.
Ah.
It is better than the second season. It has great character development for side characters, and it has really good representation for non-binary people and people with physical disabilities,
Right.
differently abled people. I lived, laughed, loved. It was amazing. It was far better than the second season. The second season, in retrospect, was not good.
Well.
It's perfect. And I also started watching Squid Game.
Oh, nice. I saw the first episode of Sex Ed.
Mm.
I did not watch Squid Game yet. I plan on it. And I watched the first episode of WandaVision last night. I didn't tell you.
Oh shit! All right, quickly. What was your like one 30-second review of it?
Of the first episode that I saw?
Yeah.
The entire time I was like, why are they in a TV show? What is happening?
Great. That's what I want. That's what I want.
I was literally like, okay, this is funny, but like, why are they in a TV show? Where did Vision come from? That's what was going in my head. So
the mystery will unravel. The mystery unraveled.
And
Okay,
then,
great.
And then I saw the next episode. I was like, it's them continuing with the sitcom. I was like, but how are they here? Like,
oh, girl, it'll happen. Every question is answered by the end.
Okay. So I've started my Marvel series.
Thank God. This has been, I'm sure we're over time, the What Do the Gays Think podcast. If you don't follow us already, we're on all podcasting platforms and on YouTube at What Did the Gays Think. Like, comment, subscribe, girl boss, gatekeep, gaslight us. Follow us on Twitter at WDTGT Podcast for all updates on when new episodes arrive. When we stream at What Do the Gamers Think on Twitch, GAYMERS. And also where we just tweet fun stuff, where you can find a link tree to all the links, including our Redbubble for our merch, if you want to buy some. We stream many games. We talk about many topics. We gaslight each other. I mean, it's really just a family over here. So get on board. Tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your homophobic relatives. We want to talk to all of them.
Tell your homophobic relatives.
Anything you'd like to add before we close out?
Yes, I do want to add something that I just had a funny thought.
Lay it on me.
So on one of my TikTok videos, I got a comment yesterday, and it was a video of me talking about my boyfriend or something like that. And this one comment goes, "Ew, boyfriend, disgusting. Y'all need to burn," or something like that.
Okay.
My first thought was like, first of all, you're on a gay man's TikTok for a reason. TikTok's algorithm knows who you
Yeah.
are. So maybe think about
Yeah.
that. Secondly, that was the fastest I've ever blocked a person on TikTok. So quick to
Oh,
blocking them. It was amazing.
you broke your screen. It was
I
so
was
fast. It
like
was like doof. The hammer of God
oh,
came down and blocked him. Did you check out his videos? Did he have any videos?
no, I just blocked him immediately or them, whoever
Good.
they are. Um
I'm assuming it's a straight white man.
probably. Anyway, we can end it here then.
All right, well, I'm perpetually confused as to what the fuck Dave Chappelle was trying to say in his last special, Patrick.
And I am that one commenter on TikTok who got blocked
Ew.
immediately. Ew. me,
Goodbye.
me when you bring up dental dams.
They're valid. Dental dams are valid.
No, they are valid. All right, goodbye, everyone.
Oh my